Welcome back. This is our final episode in the podcast regarding our book, Intercultural Competence Through Virtual Exchange as a Tool in Achieving the SDGs. Our co-editor, Dr. Elena Duvalou from Metropolitan College of Greece, is here today and joining me in discussing kind of the final chapter in what we would like to convey about our knowledge regarding the intercultural competence and using virtual exchange. Elena, why don't you begin in talking to us about the final ideas that we have regarding uniting global minds for achieving the SDGs?
Thank you, Kelly. I'm delighted to do this podcast with you regarding our reflections from this journey in writing and editing this book. Virtual exchange, of course, is the core of pedagogy that we use as a theme in our book. And it's on the forefront as a global tool and pedagogy to achieve the United Nations SDGs. And another core thematic in our book is the intercultural competence skills. And what we have discussed extensively in this book is that by fostering intercultural competence skills, we enable our students to become the agents of change who will create a future that is more peaceful and more sustainable. And this is where we come in as educators. We are asking a very important question. What is the role of academia in fostering these intercultural competence skills in order to drive social change within the community, within the society, and the natural world? And we have both the privilege and the duty to go beyond just simply teaching material. As educators, we must adapt, grow, and include others, and encourage the values and abilities that will aid our students to succeed in what we have as an increasingly interconnected world. So the book, in that sense, demonstrates that as the world becomes more interconnected, individuals with strong intercultural skills are better positioned to drive positive change and work towards a sustainable future for all.
I think that's a really important point. I think that is one of the major points of our book. I think that's a really good point, Elena.
And it's important also to note that the book has showcased virtual exchanges and collaborations drawing from case studies of which 65% represent the Global South. Of course, this presented the challenges, the considerations, and the opportunities that they are inherent in developing and delivering the virtual exchange projects, but also the students' reflections, as well as the teaching strategies which embrace a diversity, inclusion, and equality and social justice learning environment. And this is the message that we would like to carry on from writing and reading this book.
I think also I agree 100% that this is really an important goal and often not portrayed as a learning outcome for professors who are working in the universities, that we are also preparing learners for the future.
No, absolutely. And we drew from various theories about how intercultural competence skills could achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. We have looked into scholars like Geert Hofstede's work, which is very well known for his scholarly work and his book on culture's consequences. Now, he supports that culture is humans' means of coordinating the social world. And of course, there are lots of critical academics that have condemned that culture that is not a standard social science variable in the sense that it can be measured or dimensionalized and framed to a set of norms, in contrast to a kind of marginalized conceptions. But they argue that intercultural competencies is a lifelong process. And in that sense, intercultural competency is not limited to attitudes, but also involves awareness and knowledge of different worldviews and the capacity for having or developing a behavioral flexibility to face them. There are three very important core intercultural competencies that are considered key in individual preparation for intercultural collaboration. It's the intercultural communication, which refers to kind of understanding and expressing oneself through various forms of communication. It's the intercultural sensitivity, which focuses specifically on the empathy regarding differences and possible difficulties when interacting with people from different cultures. And thirdly, it's the intercultural responsibility, which also demands a kind of a shared commitment to critical cooperation and respectful dialogue among individuals with different languages, with different cultures, coming from different disciplines, and in many cases having different ethical principles, as well some moral choices and values that can be applied when participating with others in meeting and collaborating. And this was actually brought up and discussed by many of the co-authors in the previous podcast that we carried out.
I agree. And so I think as someone who's a faculty member that is, on the ground in the universities teaching courses, that I think one of the kind of the underlying themes is as we prepare our learners, we're preparing them, of course, for disciplinary skills. But what perhaps is not stated all of the time is these intercultural skills that you're talking about and how important those are for our learners into the future in this global complex society that's actually perhaps getting more polarized right now, is that they have to transcend those bridges of cultural dimensions to be effective.
You're actually bringing a very important point. And we have seen, particularly in the last few years, that we have increased nationalism, we have international tensions, we have very important issues with immigration. Some of the immigration is happening and brought on by climate change. We have displacement of millions of people due to acts of violence and war. And it's important for educators to come up with creative strategies to unite their students, because students' future actions and decision making, and we must never forget that, not just regarding the environmental part of the sustainability, is also how they treat one another as human beings. And this can be influenced greatly by exposing them in their courses to the importance of cultural awareness. So this is very important, and the virtual exchange collaborations can help identify similarities with peers from different places, but most importantly, it can also teach them to celebrate our differences.
And what I have really enjoyed for being a practitioner for about 10 years now in virtual exchange is that we engage our students in very meaningful cross-cultural dialogues, that we provide them opportunities to work to solve problems together cross-culturally. And I think virtual exchange gives us a more in-depth way for the students to interact in a course.
Absolutely, because it provides, as we have seen from numerous case studies in this book, that it provides a platform for exchange of knowledge. It really helps individuals to improve their approaches, their strategies, and this practical experience can really allow individuals to see the tangible impact of collaborative efforts. It can also encourage them to take concrete steps towards SDGs realization, which is very important. So these are not just a set of elements and criteria that they are written by the United Nations for someone else to be active on achieving them. We are all part of the same community, the global community. And it's very important here, perhaps, to just talk a little bit about this continuous adoption of the term global, which raises this challenging question of power disparities to be addressed. And that concept of global development, with its emphasis on kind of producing together, co-producing with partnerships, with resilience, does not address always the disparities that they happen around the world, all the agendas that they are behind. And it's for many, these are set by the global north. So there is a very important discussion here regarding the idea of dynamics of colonial and decolonial context, which I believe we can also address in this podcast.
I'm really glad you brought this up. And the book, in several of the cases, brings up issues about this neocolonialism that we don't, all of us as faculty, we don't want to take in the problems in our global society, the power differentials, into our course. We don't want to in any way mirror or reinforce those particular power differentials. However, I think while we are very concerned about that, we also recognize that, of course, many of these cases use English as the foundational language for communication. And of course, we all are, by definition, using technology. And so while we understand that we certainly don't want to mimic the power differential or the stereotyping that occurs in the global society in our course, we also recognize that there is some of that perhaps with the focus on using English and the technology that is needed in terms of Wi-Fi, internet, whether it's a phone or a computer. These are technologies that are fundamental to be used in virtual exchange.
That is correct. And I think what we discuss in the book is that perhaps an idea is that the decolonial approach, for example, to virtual exchange, could encourage linguistic diversity where it can be facilitated in order to ensure that participants can communicate in their native languages. So this is very important. Or it could challenge the dynamic by fostering dialogue. I'm underlying dialogue rather than kind of one-sided teaching, allowing all the participants to contribute with their experiences, their knowledge, and their perspective equally. And this was discussed in various chapters by various authors, how important it's to apply these principles to virtual exchange collaboration, even by co-creating curricula and dialogue formats with partners from the global north and the global south together, ensuring that way that the program is not only inclusive, but it also reflects the values, the priorities, and the disciplines and backgrounds of all the participants.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And so I think as well as the learners are experiencing and building their intercultural skills, in many cases, the faculty are as well.
Absolutely. And I think it's very important here also to reflect on the importance of virtual exchange and its potential that it has on the learner well-being.
Mm.
And I believe there is a lot of research that showcases and supports the benefits of using virtual exchange in global learning to benefit students' well-being. And perhaps you would like to elaborate on that.
Yes, yes. So we all of us know who have been teaching for many years that the learner's well-being has become a significant issue for our different academic institutions. And this was before COVID. This COVID exacerbated it, of course. But we saw well-being as a problem that we had not really fully addressed in our infrastructure in academia, and our learners were basically demanding that we treat the whole person. And when that learner comes to the academic institution, they come as a whole person. And so the World Health Organization has documented this very well, the kind of epidemic that we have with mental health that is occurring across the world. And there's been a lot of discussion of how to deal with this. And universities have really struggled in trying to provide, for instance, they provide more counseling, more outside activities for especially those beginning learners that come to the academic institution, to get them connected, to get them to feel that they belong. And so one of the things that one of the contributing authors, Dr. Mona Pearl, and I set out to do was to take a look at how does virtual exchange impact the well-being of the learner. And this is somewhat of a pioneering area because our learning outcomes in our syllabi when we work on a virtual exchange project is usually focused on the academic components. We never ever put in a learning outcome or have a goal, even a sub-element goal of how does this impact the student other than their academic and their multidisciplinary or intercultural skills. What is it doing to kind of the worldview of the learner, and are they internalizing this? And so there's a series of articles coming out by Dr. Pearl and myself where we look at three different areas of mental health and well-being. The first one is self-efficacy, and we found that virtual exchange can, if it's done in a quality manner, really impact the self-efficacy of the student. And this is actually a measure that is described by the student. So the student will actually reflect after the course is over and say that they have improved their self-efficacy. And we found that the pathway through that was through knowledge, skills, and ability. They feel that that intercultural dimension that we give them in virtual exchange actually improves their what they call the KSAs, the knowledge, skills, and abilities. And
Mhm.
from that, they feel that they have gained self-efficacy, which I think is really tremendous and something perhaps we didn't anticipate as scholars or faculty members doing virtual exchange. The second the second concept of mental health is resiliency. And especially during COVID, resiliency was very much tested. And so a second piece that is coming out in the research is we found that when we look at the measures of resiliency before and after the virtual exchange, that students felt that they became more resilient, able to handle unpredictable events. And again, they felt that through these intercultural skill buildings and the level of uncertainty that comes with that when they first enter the course, that they've gained some resiliency to handle the challenges, unexpected challenges that come throughout the virtual exchange. And they apply that to their daily lives, that sense of resiliency.
Mhm.
And the last piece that is coming out is on well-being. So when we compared the self-identified well-beings, self-declared, self-assessed well-beings from the learner after COVID and before COVID, they felt that they had, as a part of this problem-solving collaborative work that's done in virtual exchange, that they have had an enhanced well-being, that they felt they had good feelings, positive feelings of the interaction with people that were unlike themselves, that were from a different culture, a different place in the world. And I think these three concepts of improving mental health through virtual exchange is just amazing, because we did not really set out with that as a goal. Like I said, it's not a goal that's
Mm.
in your syllabus. And so we were, as researchers, very pleased to see that our work is affecting the actual essence of the learner, of how they view themselves.
And I guess this is why, in a way, you're kind of reframing the importance of measuring this well-being by incorporating this into the course evaluation, since you recognize the potential that virtual exchanges, programs and collaborations have to contributing to the students' mental health. So you're putting it in a new frame. You're bringing it to the forefront, right?
And I think that's a very good point, that something that for the future that we could all consider as instructors is to take a look at maybe including some non-academic and some things that are not necessarily a learning, an express learning outcome in the syllabus, but to take a look at what impact are we having overall to the overall learner. And I think, when we do that, you'd be quite surprised at what those impacts are to the student and to the faculty member. I think also we might want to include, how does this impact faculty members?
These outcomes of improving significantly the self-efficacy and resilience of that these students have demonstrated is taking me now to another part of our discussion that has to do with empowering the individual. And I think this is also a great message that we want to share with this book. The empowerment of the individual, which was also set as a goal from the Agenda 2030. And Agenda 2030 really views a particular type of power, zero-sum, redistributable, and choice-driven power. So it kind of reframes the idea of power. We're seeing a power shift, and I would like to refer to a very important piece of scholarly work by Jeremy Hymans and Henry Thames, which is the new power, that actually reframes the idea of power by discussing a shift from what they call the old power, which they define as being held by few, closed, inaccessible, and leader-driven, to what they call the new power, which is made by the many. It's open, participatory, and peer-driven. So this new power, which emerged from our increased connectivity, what we're discussing about this interconnected world, from new tools and technology, is more looked into as a current, while the old power is more like a currency. So the goal with the new power is not to hoard it, but to channel it. And what a better way by empowering the individual. So I think this is a very important message that I would also like to carry to our audience, that the power has the potential of creating change through their actions. And of course, we are part of that process as educators and academics.
Very well said. Very well said, Elena.
Um, I think this is also a very important part of our discussion to perhaps refer generally to the case studies that we have analyzed and discussed in this book. And we all agree that we demonstrate that collaboration among the university students from various disciplines through this virtual exchange collaboration can contribute to their awareness of environmental sustainability. It can foster cross-cultural understanding and equip them better to tackle persistent real-world problems. And we know being academics, that our educational systems play a critical role in helping our students to develop these intercultural skills by pairing them with classmates, as we did in our virtual exchange collaborations from throughout the world. And these global talents and minds can be united to solve problems collaboratively and achieve group objectives, which is what we want to achieve as a message through this book.
Definitely. And I think this is a good time to acknowledge our contributing authors for these cases. I think we had a very broad range of different countries being paired together. And I think the messages in each of the cases are not only reinforcing, but also provide the audience member reading the book with some really good practitioner grounded base activities, pedagogies, and it can help, I think, those of us who are in virtual exchange to broaden our scope in our courses and to think about what are we actually trying to achieve here outside of, in addition to the disciplinary goals of the particular course.
Yes, definitely acknowledge, and a big thank you to all our contributing authors. They're all these outstanding scholars participating in this book. A big thank you for sharing in this book their scholarly work. They have been years in education and in academia. And also, I think it's important to thank at this point our publishers in Springer Nature for their support and guidance in concluding this book.
Yes, and I think we need to say that, Springer Nature as a press gave us outstanding peer review comments, both on the book proposal and on the final draft document of the book. And so I really have enjoyed working with this press, and their contributions are definitely a fingerprint on our book.
That is correct. It has been also a journey, quite an adventure, working with you, co-editing this book, and being also my partner in our virtual exchange collaboration. And I think this is also a very important moment for me to thank you personally for being part of this journey, for inviting me to be a co-editor in this book and allowing me to grow both academically, but also in my scholarly activity and to engage in this very important publication. So a big thank you to you, Kelly, as well.
Oh, and Elena also ditto back right at you. It's been a wonderful process. And I think what that shows is many of our contributing authors are colleagues, and that collegiality has turned into friendships. And I think that is one of the things that both the learners and the faculty that get involved in working on virtual exchange don't always fully realize how these kinds of activities bring people together from around the globe. And Elena was one of the people that I did a door knock. If you listen to our chapters, on early chapter on how to obtain and reach out to get a collaborating virtual exchange partner, Elena is the perfect example of the door knock. So our faculty that bring together courses in virtual exchange actually are also expanding their scope of intercultural skills. And Elena, I've so enjoyed working with you on this, as well as all the collaborating authors. And many, like I said, many of them are actually becoming much more than just co-authors.
It has been a great adventure for sure.
Well, an audience, I hope that you've enjoyed our podcast, and I know you will enjoy reading the book. It is a wide scope and it has a variety of different countries paired together and focused on a variety of different disciplines, be it humanities, languages, STEM, all represented, social sciences, all represented in the book. Elena, why don't you close out? What would you like to say?
I would like to say that it has been quite a journey of growth, and I believe that it was an important opportunity to understand better the pedagogical tools involved. It gave me also the opportunity to learn even more pedagogical tools, which I will definitely embrace in my forthcoming virtual exchange collaborations.
Thank you. And thanks to the audience for listening. And we really hope you enjoy the book.
Thank you.